What if I told you that the state sitting in the middle of America, the state everyone flies over on the way to somewhere else, invented the third largest fast food chain on earth, the most controversial plate of pasta in America, a candy that outsells every other candy in Ohio every single year, a bar food that has been in a legal battle over its own name for decades, and a hot dog so specifically regional that the man who made it famous never actually called it a hot dog? Ohio, the Buckeye state, 11.5 million people, four of the largest cities in the Midwest, a state that has been quietly feeding the country since before most Americans were paying attention. This is America's most controversial plate of pasta. Eater called it that. The description is accurate. In 1922, two brothers named Tom and John Karadziev emigrated from Macedonia, a region that had just been torn apart by the Balkan Wars and World War I, and opened a food stand inside a burlesque theater on Vine Street in Cincinnati. They called it Empress Chili. The chili they served was nothing like Texas chili. No tomatoes, no beans in the base, no thick, dark stew. What they made was a thin Mediterranean-spiced meat sauce, ground beef seasoned with cinnamon, cloves, allspice, cumin, and other spices drawn from Macedonian cooking traditions. They served it two ways: over spaghetti or on a hot dog. Customers started asking for cheese on top, then onions, then beans. A system of ways developed. Two-way is chili on spaghetti, three-way adds cheese, four-way adds onions or beans, five-way adds both. That is still in use at every Cincinnati chili parlor today. A former Empress employee named Nicholas Lambrinides opened Skyline Chili in 1949, named for the view of Cincinnati's skyline from his first location. Another family turned their hamburger restaurant into Gold Star Chili after noticing the chili outsold the burgers. Today, Cincinnati has over 250 chili parlors. Skyline alone has over 130 locations. Camp Washington Chili won the James Beard Foundation America's Classics Award in 2000. The Smithsonian named it one of America's 20 most iconic food destinations. On November 15, 1969, Dave Thomas opened the first Wendy's old-fashioned hamburgers at 257 East Broad Street in Columbus, Ohio. Thomas was a self-made man in the most literal sense. Adopted as an infant, dropped out of school at 15, worked his way up through the restaurant industry, helped turn around four failing Kentucky Fried Chicken locations in Columbus in the mid-1960s, and sold his stake back to Colonel Sanders for $1.5 million. He used that money to open Wendy's. Two decisions defined the chain. First, the square patty. Thomas wanted customers to see the corners of the beef extending beyond the circular bun, visible proof that they were getting more meat than the bun could contain. Never cut corners, he called it. The square burger became Wendy's most recognizable visual identity. Second, the Frosty. A frozen dessert thick enough to require a spoon, created at the original Columbus location, designed to be eaten alongside a burger and fries in a way that soft-serve ice cream was not. The Frosty is still on the menu. The recipe has barely changed. Thomas named the restaurant after his 8-year-old daughter Melinda Lou, whose nickname was Wendy. He later said he regretted putting her name on it because of the pressure it placed on her. The pressure was considerable. Wendy's became the world's third-largest hamburger chain, behind only McDonald's and Burger King, with over 7,000 locations worldwide. This is the breakfast food that most of America has never heard of, and that Cincinnati has been eating since German immigrants arrived in the 19th century. Goetta, pronounced Goetta, is a sausage patty made from coarsely ground pork, steel-cut oats, onions, and seasonings. The oats are not incidental. They are the defining ingredient, giving Goetta a texture that is dense and slightly sticky when raw and crispy-edged when fried. More like a grain cake than a sausage, browned in a skillet until the outside crisps and the inside stays tender. German immigrants in Cincinnati's Over-the-Rhine neighborhood invented it as a way to stretch limited meat over multiple meals. The oats added bulk and calories. The pork fat kept it cohesive. It was Depression-era food before the Depression. Efficient, filling, and cheap. Glier's Goetta, a Cincinnati company, has been making Goetta since 1946. They produce approximately 1 million pounds per year. Goetta Fest, held annually in Newport, Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati, draws tens of thousands of visitors for 2 weekends every August. Every diner, every breakfast spot, every grocery store in the greater Cincinnati area carries it. Would you do it? For a Klondike bar? The Klondike bar was invented in 1922 by the Isley Dairy Company, which began as a milk delivery service in Mansfield, Ohio in 1902 and expanded into ice cream production. The original Klondike bar was a square slab of vanilla ice cream, hand-dipped in real chocolate, a thick, crackling chocolate shell that surrounded the ice cream completely. It cost 10 cents, priced to be accessible to the working class. It was named after the Klondike Gold Rush, evoking cold, remote, precious things. Easley's expanded the Klondike bar's production and distribution over the decades, but the real national expansion came in the 1980s with the advertising campaign. What would you do for a Klondike bar? The slogan became one of the most recognized in American advertising history, spawning 30 years of increasingly absurd answers and turning a square of chocolate-covered ice cream from Ohio into a national punchline and a genuine icon simultaneously. Unilever purchased the brand in 1993. The Klondike bar is now sold in every grocery store in America. The original hand-dipping process is long gone, replaced by industrial production. The chocolate shell is still there. The Buckeye tree is Ohio's state tree. Its nut, a round, dark brown seed with a light tan spot at the top resembling the eye of a deer, is the symbol of Ohio State University and the inspiration for one of the great regional candies in America. A Buckeye candy is a ball of peanut butter fudge, peanut butter, powdered sugar, butter, vanilla, rolled smooth and dipped 3/4 of the way into melted chocolate, leaving the top tan peanut butter visible. The result looks exactly like the Buckeye nut. Dark chocolate body, tan top circle. The resemblance is precise and intentional and delightful. Nobody invented the Buckeye candy at a specific moment. It developed in Ohio kitchens over decades, appearing at church bake sales, holiday cookie exchanges, potlucks, and tailgates. The recipe is simple enough that every Ohio family has their own version. The debate about whose version is better is ongoing and will not be resolved. What is resolved? Buckeye candy is Ohio's sweet, the way beignets belong to New Orleans and peanut brittle belongs to no specific place but Buckeyes belong entirely to Ohio. They are made in October before every Ohio State home game. They are sold in candy shops across the state year-round. Akron, Ohio invented these. Akron will tell you this with the confidence of a city that knows exactly what it contributed to the world. A sauerkraut ball is a deep-fried appetizer. Sauerkraut mixed with cream cheese, ground pork or ham, onion, and spices rolled into a ball, breaded and fried until golden. The outside is crispy. The inside is creamy and savory and tangy from the fermented cabbage. They are served with a spicy mustard dipping sauce. They are not available in most of the country. In Akron, they are on every bar menu, at every party, at every tailgate. The German immigrant community that settled in northeastern Ohio brought sauerkraut and the tradition of fermenting cabbage with them. Akron's specific combination, sauerkraut stuffed inside a fried cream cheese ball, appears to have developed locally, at restaurants and bars in the city, and spread through the community without a single identifiable inventor. Cleveland has a sandwich that exists almost nowhere else, that is at once simple and excessive, and that is deeply embedded in the city's working-class history. The Polish boy is a kielbasa sausage, a Polish pork sausage, grilled or deep-fried, placed in a hoagie bun and then completely covered with French fries, coleslaw, and barbecue sauce. The sausage is at the bottom, the fries are in the middle, the coleslaw goes on top. The barbecue sauce soaks into all of it. You eat it with both hands, a pile of napkins, and the specific kind of commitment that Cleveland food demands. The Polish boy emerged from Cleveland's Polish immigrant community on the city's east side. The large Polish population that settled in neighborhoods like Slavic Village and Warsaw brought kielbasa traditions with them. Cleveland's African-American community adopted and adapted the sandwich, adding the barbecue sauce and fries that distinguish the Cleveland Polish boy from a plain kielbasa sandwich. The result is a sandwich that crosses cultural lines in both its ingredients and its audience. Hot Sauce Williams, a Cleveland institution that has been serving since 1964, is the establishment most associated with the definitive version. White Castle was not invented in Ohio. It was invented in Wichita, Kansas in 1921 by Walter Anderson and Edgar Waldo Billy Ingram. But Ohio is where White Castle became an institution. The chain expanded rapidly through the Midwest in the 1920s and 1930s, and Ohio became one of its most important markets. Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Dayton. White Castle locations spread through the state and became part of Ohio's food identity in a way they did not in Kansas. The White Castle slider, a tiny, square, steam-cooked hamburger patty on a tiny bun with onions and a pickle, 5 holes in the patty to let the steam cook the meat through, became the late-night food, the 3 a.m. food, the after-the-game food, the hangover food of an entire generation of Ohioans. The company's headquarters has been in Columbus since its early expansion. Ohio is where White Castle has the highest density of locations relative to its other markets. The slider is 5 for $1 in 1921 money and several dollars for a bag of 10 today, and it still tastes like exactly what it was designed to be. The most efficient small hamburger ever engineered, consumed in multiples, in the company of people you will tell stories about later. In Toledo, Ohio, there is a restaurant that has been serving Hungarian hot dogs since 1932, that gained national fame through a television show set in Korea, and whose walls are covered with signed hot dog buns from celebrities who were instructed, upon arrival, to sign a hot dog bun rather than a photograph or a menu. Tony Packo opened Tony Packo's Cafe in Toledo in 1932. He was Hungarian-American. His hot dog, called a Hungarian hot dog, though it is not precisely what you expect, is a natural casing hot dog served in a steamed bun, topped with a chili sauce that is spiced differently from Cincinnati chili but occupies the same cultural role, along with mustard, onions, and shredded cheese. The restaurant became nationally famous in the 1970s when Jamie Farr, who played Corporal Klinger on MASH and who grew up in Toledo, began mentioning Tony Packo's in episodes of the show. Klinger's character, a Toledo native, referenced Tony Packo's so frequently that the restaurant became embedded in the show's mythology. People from across the country started making the trip to Toledo specifically to eat there. The celebrity hot dog buns started when Burt Reynolds signed a bun on a visit rather than a photograph. The practice spread. The walls now hold hundreds of signed buns, preserved and mounted. In 1924, the Akron Candy Company in Bellevue, Ohio, invented a lollipop small enough to fit in a child's mouth without being a choking hazard, inexpensive enough to give away by the handful, and flavored well enough to be worth arguing about. They called them Dum Dums. The name came from a word that was easy for small children to say. The original flavors were 7: lemon, lime, orange, coconut, cherry, grape, and butterscotch. The price was designed to be so low that any business, a bank, a barbershop, a doctor's office, could buy a jar and offer them to children for free. That distribution model is why Dum Dums are everywhere. They are the lollipop handed to children by bank tellers, by pediatricians, by anyone who wants a small child to stop crying immediately and completely. They are the lollipop found in the jar on the checkout counter at every small business in America that has ever tried to make customers feel welcomed. In 1953, production moved to Spangler Candy in Bryan, Ohio, where they are still made today. Spangler produces approximately 12 million Dum Dums per day. Every day. 12 million. But here is the invention within the invention. At the end of every production run, when the machines switch from one flavor to the next, the last of the old flavor and the first of the new flavor combine in a single lollipop.